Hey, how y'all doing? Good. Real quick, he said that I started in the 90s. He added like 10 years in my life. I was 13 in the year 2000, so I just wanted, in case you thought that I was in my 40s, I'm not. And I was watching Andy Crouch from the back, and it was great. And I feel ill-equipped. All I got is words. He was playing music and showing pictures. All I got is words. But I'm cool, so I win. And what I'm going to talk about is I'm going to continue with the same theme, talking about creation and creativity. And as he just said, as he introduced me, I am a rapper. I've been rapping for a long time, and I love it. There's a lot of stuff I love about it. Though the stuff that people think about, that they think is cool, that they think you might love about being a rapper, those aren't really the things that I love the most. So, I get to do cool stuff. I get to make songs and hear my records. I get to, shoot music videos, and I get to, travel around the world and be on stages in front of lots of people, and that stuff does sound pretty cool, and it is. But let me tell you what I love the most about being a rapper. I love the process of creativity. There is something special to me about the fact that I get to create stuff, the fact that I can sit down in my home studio and I can think of something that doesn't exist, and I can start to create it, and I can see the finished product. It feels like this magic process that God allows me to be a part of, where I essentially make something from nothing, and I take stuff that already exists, like sounds and words, and I make something completely new of it. That's a very God-like thing that he allows us to do with creativity. It's amazing that he invites us into that. I saw a video the other week of a woman on social media who was a first-time author. She'd written her first novel, and when she got in the mail the first copy that she saw, she wept. Because there's something special about thinking something up in your mind and then using the gifts that God gave you to bring it to fruition, and then to see that finished product that you get to share with the world. That's my favorite thing about being a rapper, that I can think, I want to write a song that feels grand and that feels victorious, that feels kind of mellow, though, that talks about the victory that we have in Jesus. And I can write that song and I can share it with the world, and then I get to talk to people who are impacted by it. That feels like an incredible privilege that God has given me. I get to share it. And here's the thing, I feel like if I work hard on it and I make it great, people will want to listen to it again and again, and I feel confident about that. And here's why: because people love beauty. Right? People love beautiful things. If I can make something beautiful, I feel like people will enjoy it. I wonder if you've ever noticed how much every single person that you've ever met and everyone who's ever existed actually loves beauty. We love beautiful things. Now, we may disagree about what's beautiful. Everybody loved that movie Mad Max Fury Road. I thought it was boring. Nothing happened at all. It's like, no, it's Fury Road, but we just gonna stay on this road the whole time? Ain't no other exits or nothing. So we may disagree about, what kind of stuff truly is beautiful, but everybody loves beauty. There's something about being human where we're discontent to just make stuff that's useful. We also want stuff to be beautiful. So like I was walking my dog the other day and went on this pathway that's kind of over near my house. And, it's beautifully paved and smooth, and I went under this bridge that was well made. But not only was the bridge well made, there was some beautiful street art on it. And then when I walked under the bridge, there was some more street art in there that was less polished and less legal, but it was still some art that people made. And then if you look in this room, there are these kind of sharp edges, and there are these beautiful lights. And you think about our clothing, even the ugliest part of our body, our feet, we like to wrap them in beautiful colored leather, right? Is that we don't just want to make sure our feet are covered and we keep them warm. We want them to be wrapped in something beautiful. There's something about human beings where we're not content just for stuff to be useful. We also want it to be beautiful. And that's part of the amazing thing about creativity. The reason I think that we love creativity and art and beauty is because it just makes life better. It just enriches our lives in different ways. Creativity makes shoes better, and creativity makes bridges better. It makes rooms better. It makes everything better. But creativity can go wrong, because when you think about, creative works of art, not all of them are this kind of magical and beautiful and life enriching like I've just described. People can make art and use their creativity that communicates destructive messages, right? Sometimes we can use art as like a echo chamber where we just keep echoing and reinforcing the worst values that we have in our society to one another. And people can use art and their creativity to creatively exploit people and to oppress people. People can use their creative giftings to try to creatively make pornographic content. Or a lot of people that we see will use creativity just as a way to get rich and famous. If I can get all that money and I can get all the attention, then I'll just use art as a vehicle for that. Right? All of those are examples of how the kind of beautiful magic of creativity can be diluted. And that happens. Here's why that happens sometimes. It happens when we kind of remove our creativity from out of the shadow of God's creativity. When we try to move our creativity from out of the shadow of God's creation, then that's when things can start to go wrong. When we puff our chests out and we feel like we're the real ones who are the supreme creators. We should get more props than we actually do. Example of this, I have a 5-year-old son, and he loves to build Legos. He's a great-looking young man. It's just like me. And here's what happens. He's better at Legos now, but when he first started, we would build Legos together, and, we'd finish, and, he was like 3 or 4. He didn't know what he was doing, so I just kind of pretended and let him pretend like he was making something. And he'd be like, Daddy, I'm going to just do this one by myself. I was like, I don't think you want to do that. He's like, Daddy, I can do this. I was like, all right, I'm going to let you mess up. I'm going to just let you see how terrible you are at this so that you can get put back in your place. Because in order for him to make the beautiful things that he made when those were finished, not only did he need his dad's help, but he also needed pre-made pieces and pre-made instructions to put it exactly how it was. He couldn't make those same things apart from me. He wanted to get out from my shadow. And when he brought me what was really just a stack of little bricks that didn't even go together well, I was like, oh, I'm glad you came back. Let me help you out now. He tried to get out from under my shadow, and it was exactly where it belonged. As creatives, our creativity has to be in the shadow of God's. For one reason, like my son, everything that we ever make, God has given us all the materials. The only thing we're ever really doing is we're being copycats. We're making other versions of stuff God has already made. We're trying to make new things from what he's made, but he's the ultimate creator. One author says it like this: God creates history, while people create an epic or drama drawn either from God's history or from unreality and pure fiction. In all art, we find an imitation of the creating ability of God. So when we try to remove our creativity from the shadow of his creation, we strip art of its power. Where it can still have a visual beauty and an artistic excellence to it, but it doesn't enrich life like the way it's supposed. It doesn't make life better the way that it could. It doesn't do the kind of good that it could. It doesn't glorify the Creator like it could. So the question is, how do we keep creativity from losing its power? Here's what we have to keep in mind. Human creativity thrives in the shadow of God's creation. Creativity thrives in the shadow of the creation. And I'll give you an example to give you a feel for what I mean by that. I'm a basketball fan. I'm terrible at playing basketball. I'm amazing at watching basketball. LeBron James is one of the best basketball players of all time. And here's the thing that happens with LeBron. I saw a fist pump. Here's one of the things that happens with LeBron. Even though he's so great, everything he does, people will compare him to Michael Jordan, no matter what it is. So LeBron could have a quintuple double, score 99 points and 99 assists, which isn't even possible. And people would be like, but would Jordan have sat out the fourth quarter? Right? Jordan wouldn't have switched teams. Why is he doing that? They're always trying to take away from his greatness. Like, Jordan wouldn't have put his arm around his teammate. He would have punched him in the face. And it's like some stuff Jordan did wasn't even a good idea. but he's in Jordan's shadow. And I think to fully appreciate LeBron James, you got to take him out of Jordan's shadow. Yeah, he may not want to take all the last shots, but he's a different player than him. For LeBron's greatness to shine, you got to get him out of the shadow of Jordan. And for us, with our creativity, sometimes we think in the same way. Look, I didn't learn everything from God, or my creativity can stand on its own. I don't want to have to be in the shadow of God's. But here's the thing, while LeBron shines brightest outside of the shadow of Jordan, human creativity shines brightest in the shadow of God's creation. That's where it was meant to shine. Right? That's the starting point for every single act of creativity that we have. So you remember earlier that I said, we all love beauty. And one of the reasons that we all love beauty, of course, points back to what God has done in creation. This may seem too obvious to even say, but God is really creative. I don't know if you've ever noticed, and if you don't believe me, have you ever seen a zebra? What is this black and white striped horse with fringes just frolicking around Africa? That's amazing. You ever seen a peacock? It just strolls up and then it's like bang, and it has these beautiful colored feathers. If that is not an art project, I don't know what is. God is really creative. Right, so us being made in the image of that creator God, right, we're creatives too. That's part of how we reflect his image. And I think one of the reasons we tend to think of God as boring, and yeah, he made everything, but I don't know if he's a creative, is because we think of God creating kind of like he was kind of bored and he kind of did what he had to do, and he speaks things into existence so it happens real fast, but that's not how it sounds when you read scripture. For instance, Job 38, it said, God speaking to Job says, "Who enclosed the sea behind doors when it burst from the womb? When I made the clouds its garment and total darkness its blanket? When I determined its boundaries and put its bars and doors in place, when I declared, you may come this far but no farther, your proud waves stop here." As God's talking about creation and bringing order to creation and sustaining creation, this doesn't sound like a God who's kind of indifferent and he just kind of does things at random. This sounds like a God who's passionate about what he's made. This sounds like a God who's deliberate about what he made. Or you think about Psalm 139. I mean, it sounds like God creates like an artist. The psalmist says, "I will praise you because I have been remarkably and wondrously made. Your works are wondrous," and I know this very well. God didn't haphazardly throw us together. God fearfully made us. God wonderfully made us. He cared about what he was making. He did it deliberately, intentionally. He made us beautiful. God creates like an artist does. And when I read that about God's deliberate and excellent work, it makes me, as an artist, as a creative, want to make deliberate and excellent work. I don't want to just make more. I don't want to just make more songs. When I as an artist, when I think about working with other people who I'm a write with, I don't want to work with people who just want to make another song, or they're just trying to get a check, or just to put something out. I like to work with people who are almost delusional in how grand their ambitions are. I want to work with somebody who thinks we're going to change the world with this beat drop. When this beat drops, the world is going to change, right? I want people who are not content just to make some okay stuff. When I look at what the creator of the universe made, if he's my example, if he's my starting point, I want to make some stuff that's incredible. Now, some of y'all after this may go and listen to my music and be like, "Trip, my life didn't change when the beat dropped." But I tried. It's the thought that counts, okay? That's what I'm striving to do, and that's what I think we should as creators. This is part of how God's creation has influenced mine. Not only are we made in the image of the greatest creator, but we are his works of art. Have you ever thought of yourself as a masterpiece work of art created by the creator? If you want to think of others as a masterpiece, you can listen to the Song of Solomon, a book of the Bible that youth group kids aren't allowed to read. This is what Solomon says. Listen to how pleasing she is. I mean, he says, "My dove, in the clefts of the rock, in the crevices of the cliff, let me see your face. Let me hear your voice, for your voice is sweet and your face is lovely. He's saying you look good and you sound good, right? He's saying God has created you in an amazing way. You look good and you sound good. We are these incredible works of art, works of beauty. It is not a mistake that we find each other beautiful. God created us that way. That's part of how we interact with the world. It's not a mistake that we love beauty. God made us that way. And our creativity, of course, should flow from His. So again, for me, part of my job then as a creative, as an artist, is to see things that are beautiful about what God has created, and then to make art that helps people appreciate them for how beautiful they are. Right? I want to point to beautiful things that God has created and say, look at how beautiful, this is beautiful, isn't it? I made a song called Beautiful Life 2 that was on my album called Rise, and it was a song just about my kids and my wife and the way that the Lord has given me these incredible little kids who drive me crazy but also bring me more joy than anything else, and their smiles, and to see God make them in the womb and to see the way that my wife has loved them. God has given me that beautiful gift. And some people reached out to me and said, Tripp, I love that song and I loved it so much it made me want to have some kids of my own. Now, I had never before been accused of making music, but apparently I did it this time. And to me, that was a joy, because part of my job as an artist is to say, look at how beautiful human life is. Look at the value of life that God gives. Isn't that amazing? Right? That's part of my job. Any artist, they'll get asked questions, often the same ones over and over again. And one of the ones people always ask is, who are your biggest influences? And the way that artists will usually answer is, we'll think of some other artists who are really good, who made us want to do stuff, and that's good. That's a good thing to point to. But every artist that ever was, whether they realize it or not, our biggest influence is God Himself. If we want to think of somebody whose work we've observed over and over and over again that inspired us to make beautiful things, God is everybody's biggest influence. Somebody may say, Tripp, I don't read the Bible for inspiration like you. I like to be out in nature. I like to be around animals. I like to just be around people that I love. Well, who do you think created those works of art? Right? If nature is the thing that inspires you, I want you to know you're studying the work of the greatest creator of all time. If other people inspire you, you are studying the work of the greatest creator of all time. If animals inspire you, I'm praying for you, but you are studying the work of the greatest creator of all time. God is all of our biggest influence. So then, as believers in Jesus, we are supposed to be the ones who have this close relationship with God, who know Him, who see His ways clearly in His Word as He's communicated them to us. Shouldn't we, more than any others, be striving for the kind of excellence that reflects Him? How strange would it be for those who know God best to care least about reflecting His creative genius? How strange would it be if those who know Jesus cared nothing about excellence and were content with mediocrity just because God's name was in it? That is not what God has called us to, right? And God has set an incredible example for us with His perfect creativity. And if you wonder whether or not God really cares about beauty Himself, don't only look to what He's created, you can also look to what He's commanded, because all throughout Scripture, God is always commanding His people when they worship Him, not just to worship Him in truth, but He's also commanding us to worship Him with creative beauty. Right in the Exodus, and He's telling them to build the tabernacle, and He's giving them these, get skilled craftsmen, and they got to build with gold and with wood. He wants it to be beautiful. Colossians 3, Ephesians 5, sing songs, make melodies in your heart to the Lord, and sing songs to one another. Why would God want to hear our lackluster voices sing Him some songs? He's commanded us to worship His beauty with beautiful creativity of our own. And it is a privilege that He invites us to do that. So if human creativity really thrives in the shadow of God's creation, how do we make sure it stays under there? Well, the theme of this conference is all things being made new. And what happens is when we're separated from God, God has created us in His image, and we are broken. We've broken what He's created. But what Jesus does is He gives His life and He restores that image in us, and He recreates us. And as God recreates us, all of our life can fall back in line with the way that he created us to be. What Jesus has done at the cross and in his resurrection is another marvelous act of creation. We are new creatures. 2 Corinthians 4, God, there's no light in our heart, and God speaks light into our heart, and he recreates. The masterpiece of new birth is as incredible as the masterpiece of the first creation, and the new creation, the new heaven and the new earth will be even more miraculous, more beautiful, more glorious. And we want to celebrate Jesus for that. Jesus continues to flex his power as the greatest creator there ever was, because yes, we can create, but only God can truly create something from nothing. And yes, we can make beautiful things, but only Jesus can breathe life into dead bones. And yeah, we can make stuff that brings each other joy. Only God can give us eternal joy. Only Jesus can live the perfect life and resurrect from the grave and give eternal joy. We should bow down to the ultimate creator and allow our creativity to be in the shadow of his. That's where it belongs. And for me, right, I'm made new by Jesus, so I want to point back to what he's made, but I also want to point forward to what he's going to continue to do. There is plenty of beauty for me to talk about and to point people to as we get there. Creativity thrives in the shadow of creation. And here's what I'll say before I'm done. One of the ways this impacts me is remembering that all my creativity is copycat stuff. He's the GOAT, and I'm just trying to imitate him in some of the things that he's done. And second thing, remembering this, restores meaning to my creativity, right? I'm understanding when I get to create and bring order to things, make something from nothing, that what I'm doing is being like God, right? So when you go to work and you do something creative, you're not just getting a check, though you are, and that's important. You're being like God. And this isn't just for professional artists, just to be clear. Every time you come up with an idea, every time you come up with an idea and execute it, every time you cook a meal, every time you redecorate your house, every time you color in an adult coloring, well, not that, but the other stuff, every time you do that other stuff, God is inviting you into the magic of creativity, and he's allowing you to participate with him in that, to reflect him in that. So I want to encourage you to look for the ways that God has called you to take part in the magic of creativity and find joy in that. Let it increase your awe for God himself. And we want to make sure that communities of believers are places where creativity can thrive, where it's not stifled, where it's encouraged, and where it's celebrated, and where the glory for it goes to God alone. Let's make sure we leave it in the shadow of his creation. Thanks.